This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen here on the case for truth and justice with the right information to help improve the situation. Folks, there are some things sometimes when we do need to be stopped. I've just got to say it. The first is out of pocket, out of hand, just insane. How can you be standing on the mountain in the brush, setting off firecrackers, setting off rockets, setting your neighbor's house, setting the fields on fire? This is California. I don't know where you think you live, but if you live in California, you got no doggone business shooting off fireworks, firecrackers, rockets. That doesn't make any doggone sense. Bombs, for playing dynamite. What kind of sense does that make? I mean, unless your name is, I'm not going to go. Okay, people who love to see you act a fool, love to see you do stuff that destroys yourself, love to see you do things that a lot of people say, well, you know, people in California are crazy. We need to send the army out there to take charge of them because they don't know how to take charge of themselves. We people who are protesting an situation against this immigration killer thing that they're doing with ICE. This is you have people who've been here all of their lives. And now somebody says, well, you're illegal. And you turn the military loose on them, running up and down the street, arresting people, destroying families. Just got, would you go to work? Would you go and go get groceries if you knew that the guys were out there lurking, hiding behind signs to come and get you? Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense at all. Now, why are they doing that? Well, they're doing that to protect, what are they trying to protect? I'd like to make it simple and say they're just trying to protect white supremacy, but it's not just that. Because there's only a few people who understand the whole program of white supremacy. Other people have been talked into it because they have such a great con man, a great liar up front. You have destroyed that. This is why people are out there blowing. This is why people are out there standing in the middle of the dry grass setting off rockets. Because they have been told that everything is fake. They've been told that no matter what they do, it doesn't really matter because it's fake. It is not fake. Life is real. What you do is real. You have no business ignoring your little voice that says, nah, don't do that. You know, you got a voice, I know you do. Everybody does, but you ignore it. Now you've been talked into believing that it's okay to just lie. If you just lie and tell the lie over and over and over again, people are going to believe it, and they do. This is how crazy we are. The woman running for Congress and running for a House of Representatives in the state of Georgia that says all of these floods that we're looking at right now, people dying in Texas, another MAGA state, and she said it's fake. Folks, nothing common about common sense, but there is something common about spirituality and understanding what's really going on. You have a little voice. You have an idea of what's right and what's wrong. You were brought up in America. You have an idea of what's right and what's wrong. You may not believe it all, but you at least have an idea that men are created equal enough to have access to equal opportunity, that women are not your objects of sexuality and for you as a man to do whatever you want to do. You know that. Life is not a P. Diddy freak out. It's not. It's a thing of responsible potential. It's not guaranteed, but the potential, and that's what we have to live for. We have to live for what we see as righteousness. We have to live for what we see as something that if I give it to you, then I should be okay with you giving it to me. You get what you give, hopefully, and you won't necessarily live to see justice take place. God is the only one that'll get around to seeing everything actually fall in place. So as we see these absences of justice, these absences of common sense, these absences of people acting in a real compassionate way with each other, it creates the opportunity. It creates an opportunity for you to show the difference between you at your best and you at your worst. Now, we have an opportunity to take care of each other. We have an opportunity to, I think, a bit of a responsibility. That if you've got children, and I think it's important, once people have children, they tend to kind of smooth out because they realize that there's something else on the planet to love besides themselves. And by doing the right thing with yourself, you can express that love and expect to see a flower grow in your child. And you don't want your beautiful child flower to be spoiled by some cactus thorn occupying circumstance that's being raised across the street. So that means you need to help raise that child across the street. You need to set an atmosphere that's going to work for everybody in the sense that you're okay getting what you give. If you give evil, what do you expect to get back? If you give doubt and fear, what do you expect to get back? What is the point and purpose of trying to intimidate and scare the rest of the world, or try to slick them and cheat them? What do you get out of that? Well, what you get out of that isn't something that you want. I know a man who lived a lie. Now he's afraid to die. He traded his soul for a bucket of gold. Now his soul wants to know why. He cheated his friends for the sake of a dime, felt no pain at all. But now the devil has come to claim his soul. And he feels so damn small, but there's no place to run, no place to hide. The devil is on his trail, no place to turn to find a kind word that could help to pay his bail. It's a doggone shame. It makes me want to cry. A friend of mine traded his soul for gold. Now he's afraid to die. Now you confronted one day with a choice that's hard to make. But if it's a question of your soul for gold, I hope you'll know which one to take. Don't trade your soul for gold, my friend. The price will never be right. Not enough for you to cast away your soul to endless night. Don't trade your soul for gold, my friend. The price will never be right. Don't trade your soul for false power, faking. It's too easy to be good. It's too easy to step forward and help people. I've got a couple of folks in here today that's what they do. I've got a gentleman in here today that has invented and patented a fertilizer that will help to make your garden grow. I've got another gentleman in here today that once your garden is growing or you find that it isn't growing, he's going to help feed you anyway. So, two people in here who feed you food for your body. And as we do that, I want you to understand it's really important to eat the type of attitude that will feed your soul so that you will really be able to not only help yourself, but help others. Now, if you're in a garden, if you're growing anything, I guess there's those little, what's that little plant that once you plant it, it looks like a cucumber, squash. Once you plant a squash, those things, I understand, they just grow. If you're growing a squash, is growing more squash than they can eat. Now, if you make friends, grow some squash and just take the extra squash up and down the street because you're going to have extra squash. But introduce Mr. Anthony Vasquez.
Oh, brother, thank you.
Anthony, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. I'm honored to be here on Sunday.
God is great. I'm grateful to have you here with us. We have Mr. Michael Grissom. Mr. Grissom, how are you this morning?
Absolutely fantastic.
Very good. Okay.
Honored to be here.
Honored to have you. Really honored to have you. Both of you gentlemen are in the food business. I'm not going to, as you can see, I could talk all day.
I can look.
Talk all day long, but I'm blessed to have two people who are very passionate about the things that they do. And Anthony, I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and we'll do the same thing with Mr. Grissom.
Well, just a couple things about myself. I've been in the food business, especially agriculture, farming, for about 15 years. Quiet spoken, haven't really said much. At some point, I realized the value of a food, the value of a seed, and that's something you can't deny. Interesting, I was convinced that I'll never turn back when the first plant came, and there's a harvest, but then there's a seeding process, and sometimes you're not sure of which one comes first.
Sounds like two harvests.
There you go. It's
Okay.
two guaranteed harvests. And when the seeds came, that one plant that was maybe $2 turned into almost 200. And that's the moment I knew that we have so much to give, that it's a new lifestyle ahead of me.
Hold it, I got to interrupt. So you're telling me that planting food gives you an opportunity to plant more food because of the seeds that the food that you planted creates. So if you only one seed in the beginning, and it grew, that one seed and that plant created will make more.
No, hundreds, thousands more, just by the care of that one plant.
You mean the extra plants that you grow from that second set of seeds may make it be thousands, but that first plant will give you some seeds, maybe 50,
No.
100?
No, normally the first round is about 400 to 500 seeds.
So if you were actually harvesting those seeds,
Instead of just the food, because there's two harvests. Correct.
okay, so, okay, I'm going to let it go. You keep talking.
That's when I realized that food is something you can't deny. It's something that has a specific value. So for everyone who's taking the seeds from the plant, they count how many seeds they've received. That's plant. You gave everything that you needed for that plant, and that harvest is a dual benefit. But when you get to the point where you're starting to enjoy seeds, you realize you can plant and sow seeds everywhere, and that was the benefit.
Man, so if I'm up here on my little corner and I plant some tomatoes, and you plant some yams, and you plant some collard greens, and somebody
Basil.
else plants some.
Basil, bell peppers, lettuce, spinach.
So 10 or 12 of us could have a passion about our own little fruit.
Correct.
And because it's 10 or 12 of us, we could actually quickly have more fruit and food than we could eat. And between ourselves, we could trade food and have a wider variety of food
Correct.
to eat.
Correct.
So it really makes sense to know your next door neighbor. It makes sense to go buy a plant and give it to your next door neighbor
As a gift.
and tell, you know. So this is
The power of love and plant.
power of loving a plant and paying attention to your neighbor could take a lot of pressure off of us and build a better community.
Amen to that.
Time for that? How are we going to do all of that?
But with the way the world works, yeah, time is something.
But we could figure out how to make that work, and I think that's part of your program is that you know you're talking about growing plants not in a big old backyard, but in a 5-gallon
Small little bucket. That way you can have some success, and you can look forward to, just like we grow, that plant can grow, and we could take it away and put it in a better place. But you can utilize that plant for a year, sometimes a year and a half, just because it's safe, it's secure, and that's the benefit of just that 5-gallon bucket versus the little small plant, little thing you buy in the store.
Very good. So the concept of a vegetable nursery comes alive.
Comes alive.
Where you're able to establish a nursery, and I'm saying you, but I'm thinking about me.
Correct.
And I'm thinking about those other folks out there who have an attitude that says, wow, I could do this.
I can.
Yes. Now, everybody's not going to, but those of you who say, I could do this, I want you to do something now. I want you to write my phone number down. 909-915-7922. Not because you're promising that you're going to do it, but because you're thinking about maybe I could grow some food and participate in this vegetable nursery project.
With 100% support.
With 100% support.
100% support. And that's
909-915-7922. And leave a message. I will call you back. Now, that's just a little introduction of what we do there. Now, Mr. Grissom.
Yes, sir.
If you knew where there was a group of, where there was a vegetable nursery, several vegetable nurseries that were growing more food than the people could eat, what would that do for your, well, introduce yourself and tell us what you do. And let's see how that fits into your lifestyle.
Well, I would say that were to happen.
Wait a minute, you're trying to get my job. Listen to this man's voice. Did you listen to his voice? Well, I'm Mr. Grissom. We're going to talk to you about your radio show.
Okay. All right,
Man, listen to
fantastic.
him. Oh, I love that.
What would happen is that I would get excited, and a lot of communities would get excited because we currently feed all over Los Angeles, starting Lancaster, Riverside, San Bernardino. We also send food to Las Vegas. We have done events up in Oakland and Chinatown. And we are currently working on a beautiful plan to help orphanages all over the country. And we're able to do that because once we find good food, and I'm not talking about someone's trash, I'm talking about some food that is at first class premium. We want to get that food into the houses of seniors, and we want to get that into the arms of families that are large families that just can't afford to go in the grocery store. Have you been in the grocery store lately, Mr.
Yeah, I went in the other day to get out of the sun because it was so hot outside. I went in for some air conditioning, but I wasn't going in to buy anything.
And as we were talking the other day, without people to get the food from these large companies that the food is just laying in the ground, that means that the prices are just going to be so exuberant that you have to be a millionaire to be able to shop. So
let me interrupt again. Now, you brought to mind something when you said the food. There's several things about what we're talking about. One is vegetables need to be fresh.
Yes.
And they need to be moved quickly from the place they're being grown to your dinner table.
Absolutely.
And so that's important. And so getting food from the farms that are a couple hundred miles away is an issue, but that's the way most of us are getting our food.
That's correct.
So which makes our other concept here a bit even more attractive if you're able to get all of your food right there in LA or right there in the neighborhood that or in the community that you are going to distribute the extra food to, that allows it to be a little bit fresher. But I want to get back out and make this quick point about something I said earlier about the insanity of ICE raids in California, raiding our farm workers, raiding our restaurant workers, raiding our lifestyle here in California. I know the world's jealous of California, and I understand.
Absolutely.
I understand. But I will not stand under that and just be oppressed by their jealousy. But folks, we have to realize that if they are ICE, is going to scare the bejammers out of our field workers, our farm workers, that they're not going to go to work, the farm workers.
That's right.
Okay, so we already know that there are some farm workers who are not going to work, reducing the work production that takes place
Yes.
on the farms. And that in some cases that we are seeing food that is not going to get harvested as a result of that, which means that there's going to be less food available for the stores,
Correct.
which means the prices are going to go up. And I'm just projecting this and hoping that I'm wrong. But as we add, the nickels and the dimes that normally make dollars, we can add the lack of the nickels and dimes and see where the dollars are not going to be there. In the case of the food, lack of workers, lack of harvest, lack of food, more cost for the food in the stores. Many more of you will be in the stores doing what I do to get the air conditioning because you can't afford the actual food. And that is a little bit of some levity to take the, you got to laugh to keep from crying.
Yeah.
But it's something that should be thinking seriously about so that we don't end up crying about it. And that's access to our food. So, Mr. Grissom, what are you doing with food now? How are you servicing people with food at this point?
Well, I'd like to go back a little bit further and talk
Please.
about how I got started feeding communities. And it started back, I've been doing this for about 10 years, but it started in 2020 when the pandemic came. When the pandemic came, people weren't working, they didn't have access to food, so I was out hustling food, if you may. And what that means is I was contacting any and everyone, but I had contracts with every table who prepared meals. And so I was getting upwardly between 2,000 to 20,000 meals a day. And in the process of doing that, I ultimately was feeding the homeless downtown on Skid Row.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what happened after that? Why are you no longer feeding that group of people, and what's your program now? And a little closer to the mic, if you will.
Okay. So what happened is on Skid Row in June of 2020, people started to come by and say, "Hey, what you got?" And they would walk away. I've never had that. I never experienced that. I made tacos, shrimp tacos, salmon tacos on the streets. People come and they eat the food. But there was so much food by June of 2020 that they started to say, well, I think I'll go down the street and get food. So at that time,
They had choices.
Yeah, choices. They had choices. And so you when you recover food. So I was recovering food at from pavilions and bonds and then also other places throughout LA. And so it's a lot of work, and you don't want to gather food and you can't get rid of it. So I started feeding communities. I started doing
And it
drive-bys.
needs to be fresh.
Yes, I started doing drive-bys, and so we were feeding, like I said, 20,000 people in meals a day, and then we were feeding 2,000 a day in fresh fruits and vegetables. And not only just fresh fruits and vegetables, I had linked in with several companies that would give me 10 pallets of meat. And so I had turkey, I had ham, I had beef, I had steaks, I had quail. I had just any type of food that you could think of, ham hocks, you name it, I had that food, and we were giving it out all over Los Angeles. So I saw a big need, but then what's happened recently is that people can't afford to even buy the food in the grocery stores, and then on top of that, when you go out to eat, have you noticed that McDonald's went from $12 to $17, and now if you go to fast food restaurant, it's somewhere around $20 if you get a drink? Who can afford that?
That's right. That's right. So you were initially feeding all of that food that you earlier described
Yes.
to basically the homeless people.
In the beginning.
In the beginning.
And then I switched over and started feeding families. And so the last couple of years I've been doing over 20 tons of food a week. So we've been peddling a lot of food.
Now that food that you were getting is probably no longer available at the level that you were getting it. Am I correct or what?
Well,
Vegetables and meats and things of that sort are probably not as accessible for you as they were, or am I?
well, let me tell you the drawback. So when you're taking donations, what has happened? People are desperate to say that they're doing hundreds of millions of tons of food. So they're accepting from the vendors the worst possible food, and they're expecting the nonprofit organizations to put that food on the tables of people in the public. So just recently, I did have a run-in with several companies because they were giving me their trash, and I had to call them and let them know, I'm not your waste management company. And so, I've been working on this program to be able to feed people, but at wholesale prices. So this is where I'm at now. I've made a deal with one of the largest restaurant wholesale companies in Los Angeles. We're currently making boxes. I believe my boxes are too big because I'm used to giving away so much food. I don't just give you a bag or a couple little pieces of something. I let people load their cars up with the food that I have. So I start off with a 40-pound box for $56, and then a senior box for $30 that has between 15 and 20 pounds. And so we have everything in it. We have berries, we have peppers, we have squash, as you mentioned earlier.
So your boxes basically are going out for about $1.50 a pound.
Yeah, essentially, essentially they're about that. But what we're mainly trying to do is to get the distribution started. Okay, that's the major problem here. Is my cost is going to be more if I have to pay someone a lot of money. So we're figuring out ways that we can get this food delivered to San Bernardino, Riverside, and other parts, because I'm not just looking at what's happening in my backyard. I'm looking at how do we feed all the people that are in need.
Okay, so your distribution model has been direct to people coming by to pick up the boxes, and you're now looking for situations where, say like here in the Inland Empire, where you would have a location that would allow people to come to that location and pick up boxes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so there's always a lot of volunteers. What I found while opening the back of my truck is that I never had the volunteers when I got there. So God is so wonderful that when I would open the back of that truck, people would just come and say, hey, free food? I said, only if you help me. And so that's how I got my volunteers, the people that would help. They would come and I'd let them get whatever they wanted, what they needed, and then they would help me to distribute the food. So I'm looking for that person. And let me tell you what happens. These people load up their cars, and then they go to all the little senior places all around town that they know of, and they're distributing that food to other people. Even when the actors were on strike, they were doing the same thing. They were taking the food, and they were distributing it in their communities, in their apartment complexes, and they were helping people. So that's why we're called low-income people.
Very good. Very good. So you also you almost solved your distribution issue there when you mentioned senior housing. In that, I would imagine that would be a good place to start negotiating or talk to them about delivering the food, because if there's 100 seniors in the building, probably 95 of them would benefit from
Absolutely.
from that food situation. Very good, very good. So, what do you need that we can support you with? And I'd also ask that same question to you, Anthony, with what you're doing. What is it that we can help you here further your project? How can we do that?
Okay, so first what we want to do is we need to get the word out to people that can benefit from the food the best. Now, I don't care what it takes me, how long it takes me to get the food to you.
Well, I care because I want it fresh.
Well, the thing is, it will take me all day to get the food out to whoever needs the food, but I don't sleep until my job is done. So if I have to hand deliver that food personally myself, I've been doing this for 10 years, and so I'm no stranger to getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning and working till 12 at night. So your food will be fresh. However, what I need most is to get the word out. Let's get people ordering and saving money, and let's get them on a process of getting the food weekly, because each week I'm going to give you something better, something different, because that's what you need. We want to make sure that people with diabetes and high blood pressure, that you're now eating the greens, the reds, the yellows. These are the type of vegetables that you don't get when we go into the fast food places. And so we have so many people that are sick. Look at me, I just turned 69 years old. And I got to tell you, if God didn't put me on the fruits and vegetables, I'd probably be all dried up right now. But for sure, the fruits and vegetables have me healthy. A few months last year, I went into the hospital for heat exhaustion, and then the doctor says, "Oh, we're going to do a triple bypass on you." I said, "Oh, no, you not." And so I went home. I was about 252. I started fasting, and I started eating my fruits and vegetables, and look at me today. My friend called me the other day. He says, "Michael," he says, "even though you're getting older, you're looking younger."
All right, now.
And that was quite a compliment, because at 69 years old, I'm not bent over. I don't have a cane, and I work like a 19-year-old. And so I really feel blessed. And I want people to know that if we're eating the right things, that
I know I didn't have a problem asking you to carry my bag in. You look strong.
Yeah, I'll pick up your car if you need it.
What vegetables, as we talk about growing now, and we talk about growing in a 5-gallon bucket. How many different kind of plants do you advise we grow in the same bucket? I would imagine one.
Okay.
Is that correct?
That is correct. Normally it's just one plant in that bucket. It's not room for 2 or 3, so just one plant.
So if we are going to suggest to Mr. Jones or Ms. Smith that we're going to give you 5 buckets, or suggest that you grow 5 different vegetables that are going to help balance your diet and keep you full and healthy.
Okay.
What particular plants would you advise? And I know I didn't warn you on this, but I shouldn't have.
Down to the. So, types of plants. The basics that you need today is your lettuce, definitely your beets. That's the primary. You need beets. Beets. It's something about that red or the purple when it's cut. It's interesting. It's like the closest thing you can get to just blood. So that's what the organic model of beets, because when you cut it, it's a representation of God's love with the superfood of beets. So beets you really need in your life. And then you have your tomatoes, which may take time, just so you have a good, well-balanced meal. I recommend basil. That would be the one on the line. There's about 5 types that most commonly we grow. Out of the 5, I'm a fan of what you call gourmet basil, mostly for chefs. There's a sweet basil, but then there's gourmet. And then the last one on my list is a sweet pepper. If I had a choice, instead of a hot pepper, I would choose a sweet pepper or a bell pepper.
So we've got lettuce, beets, tomatoes. That's a decent little salad. Basil. And
basil, you have your basil, and then the last one is you can have your bell pepper or your sweet pepper.
Okay.
The basic 4, but your 5 is what you really need at your house, and that'll give you a well-balanced, at least 1% organic model to your diet.
Now I'm having a little trouble visualizing the lettuce growing in this 5-gallon bucket.
Okay.
I mean, is that my problem of vision, or is that an actual issue?
That is a good point. So The lettuce itself will need a lot more space than 5 gallon, but what it will do is during its stages of growing, each of the leaves are edible. So you don't always have to wait till, for example, the romaine lettuce. There's about 7 or
So it doesn't have to end up being a head of lettuce.
no, it does not need to be the head of lettuce.
So it will kind of grow the same way that collard greens would grow?
Similar to it, or a spring mix. There you go, a spring mix. Sometimes a lot of families like when they get the food, they want the vegetable to be really small. Microgreens is kind of where, but it goes past a microgreen phase to a spring mix. So
Okay.
you can eat it just as though a microgreen may keep growing. It's a spring mix, and most often if you're growing in a 5 gallon bucket, you can trim the lettuce, but you really are looking for like a spring mix model.
You did not put collard greens in your top 5.
Not yet.
And I know that collard greens, once you get that collard green tree going, it'll work for you.
It will past the 5 gallon. Yeah, you'll need a home for a collard green.
But it's working at 5 gallon.
It will. It'll take you a little time, and then after that, we need to pick her up and give her a good home for them.
But the collard green will take a home in places that others won't. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay, so, all right. Okay, so 5.5 would be the collard green. I'm just, I'm from Mississippi, and
you
my
need
wife
collard
and my
greens.
mother, they know how to cook them things, and so I'm just kind of, how you gonna not put some collard greens in your garden?
You might just need to actually add that 6th item on the list and make sure you start getting involved with that 1% that we believed in you in to get started. But you did ask me a question, and I thought about this, just taking time listening. You asked, what do we need? Like, what do we need? So initially, when we started off on this topic of what do we need, me coming on air was because I'm really looking to touch some of the young, any man actually, let me just not say young, but wherever you fall in life
Because
as
we got a 69-year-old
And
that
he
said he was feeling like 42.
and I said,
No,
I
I
don't
said
need to
30.
Okay, there we go.
He's moving at the speed of light. So I just want in man, there's 2 types of growing, and I think there's a fear. Some men that are really tall shouldn't have to bend down. It's a long way down. So we would raise these beds, and when we talk about fertilizer, you're going to need fertilizer. You're going to need to call Wallace and arrange how we can better suit you if you want to be involved and have a raised bed. But when you think about what we need men and women to take that 1% and push it forward. The fact that you have to think about the importance of 1% of your diet at any organic model. That way your body can recognize what's fake. So I think that, and I think that 1% will carry you to 2% as your heart may desire, but that 1% is why we're on the air today.
Now, you said raised bed. Now, some people got sleepy and thought, they don't know what you're talking about.
That's right. So on that, my grandmother, she's right at 85, and she looked, and the doctor told her, "Oh, you want to do some gardening." She's so used to being sometimes down below. I told her we're going to raise the bed 4 feet high with raw, hard dirt. There's a difference between the dirt you buy in the store, like compost. You need raw dirt. That way there's no irrigation issues, temperature adjustments. So when you get to that point, we raise that bed up. She's able to go to the same model what her doctor told her to tend
How
to the
deep
garden.
does this bed of dirt need to be?
About 3 feet.
About 3 feet. Okay.
3 feet of raw dirt. And that's why there's a cost. That's why I'm talking about 1%. It's going to be at some point, do you want to bend down, stand up? But you got to factor in, if I'm going to be in this business, it's either I'm going to always bend down or I'm going to stand up. But that dirt itself is why the 1% of families out there are people, we want you to gravitate to this model because you may need support on that 1%, whether it's with fertilizer, seeds, plants, but you need to have support to go down a path of 1%.
So what we're really looking at here is an expansion of the idea, that being that many of us would appreciate having a garden, but most of us have no intentions of being a gardener. And so you are talking about refining the idea of a garden from someone who has a big yard and making a garden to someone who has a maybe
Five by
a
five.
4 by 8 foot area that a platform could be put together, and that would be a site to grow everything that you just talked about.
Things you wanted to grow. That's correct.
That's right. Now, the issue becomes who's going to maintain that garden? Now, we had talked about your quest to create young farmers, to create an employment opportunity for young men and women and old men and women who want to do this.
Anyone.
But anyone who wants to effectively develop that green thumb and like working with plants. I guess the concept here is you could have 1,000-acre farm, or you could have 1,000 little farms
Correct.
in people's backyard.
That's correct.
Little gardens that produce basically the same thing.
And we want to bring that back. I think agriculture right now is a component where if you think about today, based on how the model of the U.S. is going, you're going to need to have friends in agriculture.
And folks, you don't have to come through us. We're describing this because it can be done. We're here in California where the weather and the world is beautiful. You may be living in Magaland somewhere where, it's just as important for you to be able to feed yourself and make friends with make friends with people who are angry about life enough to, believe, when they wake up from the lie, they're going to need to eat anyway. So I'm not one of those people that says, oh, good for them. They voted for him. They should have all of the pain that they get. No, I didn't feel that way about the people who died in the Jim Jones cult. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm sorry for them, and I feel sorry for anybody that's caught up in a cult. So the idea is that if you can put together these 4 by 8 foot platforms, 3 feet deep, and build a garden for people, our thought is that traveling gardeners.
Correct.
Okay. That if you're on my street and we've got 10 of these in people's backyards, you're able to come on my street and work those gardens.
Service them.
Service those gardens, and we will pay you. I will pay you to work my garden.
Mm-hmm. And
there's a couple ways to do it. I can pay you by, first of all, whatever the costs are to build this, I'll cover that. And obviously, I'll cover my seed costs because with all them seeds getting ready to grow, I probably want those.
You need those.
You probably want to tell me how we can create a seed bank. Right? Okay. So I want to keep those, but my watering of the plant. Now, so there's a way. You pay the pool man.
You pay the pool man.
You pay the lawn man. You pay the guy to come by and spray dust around your house so the insects and stuff don't go in. So why would you not pay the gardener?
And you can even go a step further. If you feel that you really want to know your food, and we're advocating for the 1%, you can send it to the lab just like you go get a test.
Oh, listen, they're not sending their water
you can do it. Not the water, food.
People telling them they got lead in the water. They're telling them they got plastic in the water. They're telling them they got materials in the water, life-taking chemicals. Ain't nobody checking their water.
You need to check your food. If you want to question about your food and you question it, we could send food off to the, right now in agriculture, you have to send your food off to the lab to make sure they test it. So I say that because you can always look at how good your food is growing at home. And that would be a good example of you just know exactly where you're at with what you're doing at home and then possibly what's in the world. But you have a way to get yourself access at home. So that's why I think that 1% is important.
You be listening to this show, and as I look at our stats, we've got people all over the country and sometimes out of the country, and you may want to do this. And once again, give me a call. We're not trying to be exclusively.
Not at all.
Not at all. We want to make the world a better place, and the only way to do that is to share.
That's right.
Michael, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
I did. And, I love this concept because a couple...
Bring that mic a little closer to you. You've got that soft,
I
voice.
love this concept because about 3 years ago, I started to look for other ways that we could get food to me so I could get it out to people who need it.
Yes.
So the concept is this. If I'm growing tomatoes and cucumbers and potatoes, and you're growing snow peas and collard greens and
Butter beans.
lettuce, then I can trade with you. And you can trade with me. And then we can trade with Wallace. And so what we're doing now.
On the corner once a week, you call it a farmer's market.
Yes, exactly. So I love the concept because it works. It feeds communities, and there are a lot of people, believe it or not, here in Los Angeles that are from Arkansas, Mississippi, and places like that. Hey, they grew up on farms, so they know all about
We have
farming.
people up from Washington and Oregon,
That part.
and California,
That part.
and Idaho, and
That part.
and they can grow a little food as well.
Absolutely.
I think the other issue that I don't want to miss is that the employment opportunity, the business opportunity.
Yes.
If you have 25, 30 clients whose gardens that you are taking care of,
That's right.
and they're paying you a stipend every week to come by and handle that, and you, I would imagine 40, 50, maybe 60% of the food, because you can't eat
Can't
the
eat
food.
it all.
You can't eat
Yes.
it. And so you would like to create a business for someone. You would be part of that business, and you are actually creating a farmer's market for that gardener who's making the food. And that farmer could be a farmer's market at the corner. It could be a farmer's market at the church. It could be a farmer's market at the senior center. As a matter of fact, if I had a senior center, I would be on top of this right now in terms of having somebody come by and take care of a platform garden so that our people at the center could eat, so that our cafeteria at the center could have fresh food on an ongoing basis. As a matter of fact, we need to keep figuring this out, because right now the only thing that I'm missing is what is it, the job development people, workforce development.
We're here.
Yep, so you work with workforce development.
No, this is what it is. The concept that I created is one to help orphanages in Ghana and all other parts, even here in Los Angeles, San Bernardino. And the way it works is this:
You have fertilizer and
you
seed. Lord have
find
mercy.
people that want to buy the boxes, and we're going to give you between 10 and 15% of the earnings. So now you're earning money by helping someone else to buy food at wholesale prices. And let me tell you, you can sit there and be on your phone. I know you know 25 people that go to the grocery store. If you get them on your list to buy directly from you, we will give you that 10 to 15% each week that they buy the food. So we're creating more income for families and seniors and other people who are in need. So we are the work source.
And you're right. When you say that model in the senior model, and you have workforce EDD, and then you have the food box distribution, these are big components. Honing down in on the senior community, you're going to need workforce support. Support. And it's because they help bring these new opportunities to be able to service like the senior center. So if there is a vegetable garden on site giving access to fresh food, then that collaboration would help bridge that gap right there.
We're the quickest hour on radio, and this hour has been sponsored by the Improve Association 501c3. And but I want to say we are talking to Anthony Vasquez, a gentleman who understands that food has to be approved. It has to be labeled correctly, and it has to be inspected correctly. And so we're not just blowing in the wind here.
No.
Our operation going through you, Mr. Vasquez, has an officialdom to it that meets the requirements of food distributors, of our grocery stores, of all the labeling requirements that are there. So do your seeds, so does your
Everything.
your fertilizer is patented.
Our fertilizer is patented, so when I give these ideas, that 1% is example of this concept, and I think you brought up a big point. The advocacy for showing up today is for 1%. See, we should have 1% access to fresh food, and we have fresh food certified.
Yes.
And you should have 1%. They're that, so they develop properly, at least 1%. We're not about 50. We're talking about 1%.
1% of the food that you intake in your body
1%.
can make your body recognize the difference between good and fake.
Yeah, that's the point. Just like today we walk outside, if you looked at something concept that we've been here for quite some time on this earth, you know what good and bad means. But that 1% helps your body identify when it's coming across bad stuff, what it needs to do with bad stuff and turn it into good. And that's between you and your body and that 1%. So we're advocating for families out there, officials, anyone listening, be 1% movement. That's what this is about. 1%. It could start with 5 pots in your backyard, but when you call that 1% goes a long way, and that means we will meet you halfway. Just 1% if we give one, and you're incorporated into a food box model, or to direct delivery. It's involved in that step forward, and that's why I'm glad you brought up some of these challenges today, because I think families should be prepared for the 1% model.
Yes.
There's nothing common about common sense. And we all realize that the world is getting more expensive because we are not in charge of too much more than the ground that we stand on. But if we are willing to take charge of the ground that we stand on, we will find that there is room between our feet to grow the food that we need to eat.
How about that?
Did I say that? Did it rhyme?
Well, I don't know if it rhymed, but it certainly made
it did
sense.
rhyme.
That was right.
Yes,
It did.
it made sense.
We may need to make a song out of that.
Okay.
Excuse me, Anthony, can you write a song on that? If we control the ground between our feet, we can got enough room to grow the food we need to eat.
Hey,
That sounds good to me. Okay, listen, guys, I really appreciate that you joined us today.
Thank you.
We elevated our information back. We know something now that we didn't know before. Now everybody won't take advantage of it, but that's the way it is.
That is correct.
But if you want to take advantage of what we've said today and you are not clear about it, feel comfortable giving me a call on my cell phone and leave a message, 909-915-7922. I guarantee you I will get back to you, and I guarantee you that I will attempt to answer whatever your question is and try to bring you into the new world of self-control. And it's God's world. It's a spiritual world.
Amen.
It's a world where we are caring about each other, using compassion to go forward as our fuel. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen. Thank you for your time. We'll see you next week under 2 circumstances. 1, to go willing, 2, if the creek don't rise. God bless you.
God bless you.
God
We love
bless
you.
you.